Hi, everyone. Welcome
Hi.
back. It is Wednesday, so make sure that you are here. Thank you for being here and practicing your math with us. Today's number talk is going to be, what do you notice? So we have a beautiful picture of donuts that we see here, and there are different flavors. So I want us to just take a minute to think about what you notice. And if you have a noticing, put your thumb up. If you have two noticings, put another finger, 3, 4, 5, as many noticings as you have. Show me with your fingers. Yes. And then friends at home, you can pause the video to give yourself some think time if you need any more. All right, I see Ms. Rosales has 3 noticing. Ms. Rosales, can you tell us one of your noticings?
Sure. I noticed that there are 2 different flavors.
And what flavors do you notice?
Caramel. Wait, is it caramel, Miss T, or maple?
It's maple, Miss T's favorite donut.
And
So
chocolate.
beautiful. So we have a maple bar. That's a maple bar, and then a chocolate bar, I think. So we have 2 flavors of donuts in this box of donuts. Is there anything else that we notice? Miss T, can you share something else that you notice here?
Well, first thing I noticed was someone was probably playing a joke, and I don't know why they put their donuts in all this random mess of order, because this is not how my donuts are organized. But the second thing I noticed was that each of the donuts are cut in half.
Okay, so we noticed 2, that the donuts are rearranged in a different order and that they are cut. And you said half. Can you explain what half means?
So when I have a whole, it's like the whole piece of something, and half is exactly, if 2 people were to share, they'd get the exact amount of whatever they're sharing, because half is equal amounts for 2 people.
Right, so 2 equal parts or equal amounts. Beautiful. And Ms. Hernandez, what do you notice about the picture?
Well, I noticed that there seemed to be more of the maple donuts and less of the chocolate donuts.
Ooh, how do you know that there are less chocolate?
Well, when I count them, there seemed to be 9 of the maples, and I counted, there seems to be 7 of the chocolates.
Oh, okay. So 7 whole pieces or 7 halves?
Halves.
Halves. Okay, so 7 pieces of the chocolate and then 9 pieces of the maple bar.
Right.
Beautiful. Okay, so now I want us to talk a little bit more about what it means for a half and a whole. So we noticed, like Miss T mentioned, that these donuts are cut. So they're cut into halves, right? So a half is 2 equal parts. And when we talk about more than 1 half, we call them halves. And that's just more than 1, our plural. So I'm not sure why they cut them in halves. Can anyone think of maybe a reason why somebody would cut the donuts in halves? Miss T, do you have a reason why somebody might do this?
Maybe they think that it's not healthy to eat a whole donut in one sitting.
It's a great point, because maybe that's too much sugar. Maybe they want to save some for later, have a little piece now, a little piece later. And so they cut each of the whole donuts into a half so that they have 2 equal parts. And remember, a whole, and I'm going to circle that for us, a whole would be this entire donut. So we see this one perfectly. That would be a whole donut, but it's cut in half to make 2 pieces, one here and a second piece there. Beautiful. So what I want us to do is I want us to think about how many pieces of donuts we have. Not whole donuts, but how many just donuts that we would give to our friends. So that might be halves. How many halves do we have? When you have an idea, put a thumb up on your chest so that I know that you are ready. Ms. Rosales, how many pieces of donuts do we have here?
We have 16 half partitions.
16 half partitions. Okay. And how did you find that out?
I was going back to what I knew and felt comfortable with in my number collections.
Mm-hmm.
When I do number collections, I look at the row.
Oh, yes. Okay, go on.
So, and when I looked at the first row at the very top,
So would
with-
you be looking at this row like this?
Mhm,
Okay,
I counted them and I found that the total was 4.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 pieces here.
Mhm. And then I looked on to see the following row and it had the same amount. And visually it looked the same, but I double checked and counted to make sure. And so that was 4 more.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of reminds me of Monday when I did my counting collections by 4s. So it's kind of like a little, it helped a little bit to practice those counting. And then the third row, Ms. Rosales?
So I got another 4 there. And then the final row was my last 4. But just like we did with counting collections, we identified how many parts or how many pieces are in each set. And then we counted, we counted on 4 and 4 more is going to give me 8. 8 and 4 more is going to give me 12. And then 12 and 4 more is going to give me 16.
So that's how you got 16 half partitions. And what does this word partitions mean, Ms. Rosales? Can you explain that word for us?
Sure. When we think about breaking something apart, breaking a whole apart, the partition means that you're cutting it into a smaller piece within the same whole. So it is essentially a fraction. That's a big word for our kids to know so soon, but that is what we're working with, a part of a whole. So when we have a part of a whole, we call it a partition. And the word part is in the word partition.
Beautiful. So it's a smaller part. So would a half be considered a partition?
Yes.
So we're just defining half is the type of partition. So we cut it into 2 equal parts. So thank you, Ms. T, for reminding us that they need to be equal in order for them to be partitions. They should all be equal parts. So we have 2 equal parts of the donut. So now that we know that we have 16 half partitions, that's 16 halves, how many whole donuts do we have? Because these pieces are not wholes, they're halves. So how can we figure that one out? Miss T, can you help us here? How can we figure out how many whole donuts we have?
So I put the 2 halves together. And then if we look at the first corner, there's 1 whole maple bar. So I went down the row and just counted 1. And the next one would be 2, 3, 4. So now I've noticed that we had 8 halves, but now I've turned them to 4 wholes. And I did the same thing with the ones on the bottom. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I know that 4 plus 4 is 8.
Beautiful. So we know that 4 plus 4, and I'm going to write it here for us so that we can see it clearly. So 4 pieces on the top, 4 donuts on the top, plus 4 donuts on the bottom is going to give us 8 whole donuts. Beautiful. So we have 8 whole donuts. I'm going to write that right here. 8 whole donuts. I always get confused how to spell it, but I'm trying my best. Oopsie.
Me too, Miss Kimowich.
Let me write that again. Whole donuts. Okay. So I want us to think about a number sentence we can use because I notice that there are some chocolate donuts and there are some maple bars. So if we were to count how many maple bars we have and how many chocolate donuts we have, how many of each would we have? So let's think about the whole donut this time, though. How many whole, actually, no. Let's talk about the pieces. How many pieces of maple donuts do we have? And how many pieces of chocolate donuts do we have?
Okay.
Notice that there are those two flavors. So let's write a number sentence using those two flavors. When you have an idea, just put a thumb up on your chest. So we're going to be, our equation would be written, an add-in plus another add-in is going to give us 16, because that's how many pieces we have all together, 16 pieces. Ms. Hernandez, you have an idea?
Ms. Hernandez, move around, please.
We'll come back to Ms. Hernandez because we know that it's really difficult with our internet right now.
Except you.
So does anyone else have an idea of how we can write an equation?
Ms. Hernandez. Can you like type it in the chat? Maybe we can just.
Ms. T, do you have an idea of what number sentence we can show using the two flavors of donuts we have here in our box?
I do, but I did a subtraction sentence.
Okay, that's great.
Because I remember that Miss Hernandez mentioned that she found that there were 7 chocolate halves of the donuts. And so what I did was, I know my total, which is 16. And so I did 16 minus the 7 chocolate ones equals 9 of the maple ones. So then I found out that there are 9 maples and 7 chocolates.
Beautiful. So I can write that here, actually. We'll put 7 maple. Oh, sorry. So 7 maple and 7 chocolate donuts and 9 maple bars. And Miss T wrote a number sentence that says 16 minus 7, because Ms. Hernandez had told us before that there were 7 pieces of chocolate donuts. So 7 equals 16 minus 7 would give us 9. And I see Ms. Hernandez's number sentence. She also came up with a similar equation or number sentence that we have up here. So she has 9 plus 7, and that shows me that we can also create a fact family from these equations too. So remember, we can, when we're adding, we can always switch the add-ins and it still equals the same thing. So if we have 7 plus 9 equals 16, we can also have 9 plus 7 equals 16, and it gives us the same answer. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. So now that we know we have 16 pieces of donuts and we have 7 chocolate and 9 maple bars, there's one more number sentence we can come up with, because remember, fact families have 4 number sentences that are related: 2 addition and 2 subtraction. Can anyone think of the last subtraction sentence? Me. Mr. Rosales, I love your enthusiasm. So what would be our minuend? And that's the largest number, our whole.
That would be 16.
16 is our minuend, which is our whole. We have as a whole 16 pieces of donuts. Beautiful, Mr. Rosales.
I'm sorry, I kind of felt like I was a part of a game show. Okay, 16 minus 9.
And what does the 9 represent?
The subtrahend. It represents the total amount of 2, 4, 6, 7. It's caramel.
Caramel. And I noticed that you were using your 2s to help you count efficiently. So you were trying to do that quickly, and that's a great efficient strategy. So 16 whole pieces of donuts and then 9 maple bars, and that would give us what, Ms. Rosales?
7 chocolate bars, or
7
pieces.
chocolate bars. So we created 4 number sentences using the same 3 numbers. That is a fact family, and that's something that we are practicing this week to make sure that we really understand how subtraction and addition are related. So we can always use addition to help us figure out a subtraction problem, and we can use subtraction to help us figure out an addition problem. So thank you, teachers, for helping us. And friends at home, there are so many other things that you can notice in this picture, and I really want to hear from you. I want you to challenge yourself to think about, if you had these 16 pieces of donuts, how many would you need to give out to your family members? Because we all have different families, and they look different and have different amounts of people. So if you had this 16 pieces of donuts, how many would you be giving out to your family members, and how many would be left over? And that's just a challenge question for you to think about on your day today. So you can put your comment in the box below or submit it into Seesaw so that we can share all of your beautiful math work. So have a great time, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe.